This man's name is Steven. He is the sheriff of a town. Every afternoon, he goes around the village and rings a bell to remind people to come home quickly. He has been doing this for many years. That day, a man fell asleep in the shop because he drank too much. The shop owner had no choice but to let him stay. After that, the shop owner quickly closed the shop. The man's wife and children waited at home. It was almost dark. The man still did not return. Although the wife was very worried, she had no choice but to lock the door. That evening, the daughter was upstairs when she suddenly heard a voice outside the window. The girl went to open the curtain and found an old woman outside. She coaxed the girl to open the door and let her in. The innocent girl did not realize that she was upstairs and that a normal person could not stand outside like that. When the mother entered the house, she discovered what was happening and quickly ran to stop it. However, it was too late. The next day, the drunk husband returned home. He saw many people standing in front of the door. He thought there would be a party today. As soon as he arrived, the sheriff came out of the house. The sheriff slapped the man in the face and said that his wife and children were in this situation because of him. The man then entered the house and saw a horrifying scene. His wife and children had all been killed. All their organs had been removed from their bodies, leaving only skeletons. He was so heartbroken that he could not speak. Steven then ordered his subordinate Kenny to take the man to prison before the execution began tomorrow. A family of four, Jim, his wife Tabby, their eldest daughter Julie, and their son Ethan, were on their way to a vacation. While they were walking, they discovered a large tree had fallen in the middle of the road, blocking the way for the car to pass. While Jim and Tabby were thinking of a solution, Ethan happily climbed up a tree to play. Suddenly, a flock of black crows appeared and flew across the sky. The couple felt something was wrong, so they quickly put their two children back in the car. Because they couldn't continue, they had to find another way. However, the further they went, the less they could see the exit. The phone and internet were both out of signal. Jim thought they were lost, but he suddenly discovered a small village ahead. He planned to ask the villagers for directions back to the highway. At that time, the villagers were gathering to say goodbye to the mother and child who had just passed away last night. Jim went and asked a few people. They didn't pay any attention to him and quickly left. Sheriff Steven then came and told Jim to continue following the road ahead and he would find the exit to the highway. Jim felt that this place was strange. He didn't think much and drove away. Then the car continued to pass through the dense forest. However, after a while, Jim found himself returning to the village. Jim thought that he had accidentally gone in a circle. He tried to drive forward, but this time he still returned to the village. The whole family began to worry. They decided to turn the car around and go back the same way. However, while they were driving, they encountered another black car driving in the opposite direction. The two cars crashed into each other, causing Jim's whole family to fall into the bushes on the side of the road. The owner of the other car was also seriously injured. He tried to walk into the village to ask for help. The man was then taken to the infirmary to have his wounds bandaged. Although it was almost dark, Steven still decided to go into the woods to save Jim's family. As soon as Steven arrived, he discovered another young man in the black car. This man called himself Jade. He was traveling with his best friend when the accident happened. Seeing that Jade seemed to be fine, Steven left and ran to Jim's family. They were stuck in the car. Ethan had an iron bar stuck through his leg. Steven tried to get into the car and get them out one by one. When Steven's son Ellis heard about the accident, he quickly drove there with the priest, Nurse Trudy, and Kenny to help. With their help, 3 of Jim's family members were lucky to escape. Only Ethan was left in the car. Nurse Trudy said that they needed to operate to remove the foreign object from the boy's leg. This would take at least an hour, but it was almost dark by now, so Steven decided to stay in the car with Trudy and Jim to perform the surgery. The others quickly returned to the village before sunset. The 3 of them then went into the car. Before the surgery, Steven placed a small stone in front of the door and said that this would protect us from them. Jim listened, but still did not understand what that meant. Suddenly, Jim heard voices outside. Jim was about to open the door, but was stopped by Steven. Steven said that no matter what happened, do not open the door, otherwise everyone would die. Steven then looked outside and found that there were many people standing around the car looking in. He knew more than anyone what they really were. Meanwhile, the rest of the group was on their way back to the village. Unfortunately, the car had a broken wheel on the way. They had no choice but to run back to the village before the monsters appeared. The group then ran to the communal house. This was a dormitory for homeless people. They kept knocking on the door, but the people inside did not dare to open it. The monsters had now appeared. They slowly approached. Julie suddenly saw her deceased boyfriend. Giles was about to step forward, but was stopped by Kenny. At this time, the owner of the communal house, Donna, ordered the door to be opened. Thanks to her, the group was lucky to escape death by a hair's breadth. Then, Donna took the group back to their room to rest. She also told Tabby everything about the secret of this village. It turned out that the residents of this place had also encountered the same situation punishment as Toby's family. They accidentally got lost in the village and could not find their way out. Every night, monsters would appear in the forest in the form of their deceased relatives. They will lure the people in the house to open the door, then torture and eat their organs. The only way to stop the monsters is to put a stone in front of the door. When the monsters see it, they will not be able to enter. Back to a few hours ago at the infirmary, the young man driving the black car was lying down to recover when suddenly a strange girl appeared. She was Sarah, a resident of the village. The young man did not understand what this girl was doing here. Suddenly, she took an iron bar and stabbed it into his throat, killing him instantly. After killing the person, the girl looked scared. She kept mumbling as if she was talking to someone. When the nurse came in to check at night, she saw a horrifying scene. The girl was about to run out when she discovered that the door had been wide open for some time. The monsters quickly entered. She was scared and ran down to the basement to hide. After a busy night, Trudy finally performed a successful surgery on Ethan. The boy was temporarily out of danger. Jim's family was also reunited, thinking that everything had been resolved smoothly. When they entered the infirmary, the villagers discovered that the nurse had died. She had been eaten by monsters. Kenny couldn't believe his eyes. Kenny's father had also been killed. He was sick, so he went to the infirmary for treatment and unfortunately became a victim of the monsters. Kenny was extremely angry. He didn't know why the infirmary door was opened in the middle of the night. Meanwhile, Ethan was lying in the communal house recovering when he suddenly saw a boy his age wearing a white suit standing outside the window. Ethan then went outside and saw an old man. He was Victor, the first person to set foot in this town. Every day he went to the side of the house and measured something alone. Ethan asked if there was a boy living nearby. Victor said there were no other children here besides him. Ethan was about to ask more when Julie called him into the house. Julie felt that the old man was acting strange. That afternoon, the villagers gathered to welcome the new residents, Jim's family, and a young man named Jay. Jim was handed over the house by Stephen, where his mother and son had just passed away. However, Julie did not want to live with her parents. She wanted to live in a shared house with friends her own age. Julie had long disliked her family. Toby tried to persuade her, but it was completely useless. Meanwhile, Jade had not found a place of her own, so Kenny let her stay at his house for a few days. Before the ceremony ended, Stephen announced the death sentence to a man named Frank. He was drunk and had caused the death of his wife and children. In this village, there is a rule that anyone who indirectly harms the villagers will be arrested and locked in an iron cage in the middle of the village for a night. In particular, that person is not allowed to carry the protective stone with him. Although he knows this is a death sentence, Frank still accepts it without protest. He knows that he has killed the people he loves the most. Only death can redeem his mistakes. So that night, while everyone is staying at home, only Frank is locked inside the iron cage. He discovers that the monsters are slowly walking towards him. They surround the cage. Frank is scared and can only clasp his hands in prayer before the monsters rush into the car and smash him into pieces. The next morning, Stephen checks and finds that Frank is dead. Although Stephen knows the result, he can't help but feel heartbroken. After that, Stephen brought Frank's body to the priest for burial. Meanwhile, Jade, who has just arrived in town not long ago, accidentally discovers a secret underground cellar. Jade just went down and was horrified to see a decomposing corpse. However, when Jade looked back, it had disappeared. A strange shaped symbol appeared on the wall. Jade hurriedly ran to Kenny to talk about this. However, when they both returned, everything had returned to normal. It was just a normal cellar. Jade said that he had seen the corpse with his own eyes. However, Kenny just thought that Jade was seeing things. Those who had just arrived at this village would have headaches and mental instability. Then, Kenny showed Jade the mystery of the village. Kenny said that the residents here had all lived in different places, even thousands of kilometers away. However, for some reason, they had all wandered into the same village. Perhaps this place was not on the map at all, but just an unexplored, mysterious dimension. At that moment, the radio on the table suddenly made a noise. Kenny said that it happened often. However, Jade immediately ran to hug the radio and quickly left. He seemed to have come up with a plan. The next day, Jim took Ethan to the community house for breakfast. This place was managed by Mrs. Liu, Kenny's mother. Every day, Mrs. Liu cooked delicious dishes to serve everyone. Sarah also often came to help. While Jade was busy going to the toilet, a man named Victor came to see Ethan. Victor gave Ethan a picture. It was a picture of a child wearing white clothes. It was the boy Ethan had met outside the community house. Victor said that he had met this child before. Victor also wanted to go into the forest with Ethan to find this boy. At that moment, Jim came out of the toilet. When he saw Victor, Jim immediately rushed over, cursed and threatened him not to come near Ethan. Victor had no choice but to leave. That afternoon, while Jim and his wife were sitting outside talking, Victor secretly sneaked out behind the house. Victor wanted to go into the forest with Ethan right now. Ethan thought that they were about to have an exciting adventure, so he excitedly followed Victor. They went went deep into the forest, which had never been explored before. Most of the people were afraid of monsters, so they didn't dare to go far. While they were walking, Victor suddenly saw the boy in white from the day before, so the two quickly followed him. The two then went to a big tree with a deep hole in the middle of the tree trunk. Victor tried to throw a rock into the hole, but it suddenly fell from above. They couldn't believe their eyes. They didn't understand what strange thing was happening here. Meanwhile, Jim and Toby discovered Ethan missing, and the back door was wide open. They thought something was wrong, so they ran into the woods to look for him. They both shouted Ethan's name as they walked. In the moment of danger, a gunshot rang out, causing them to run away. It was Victor, who secretly carried a gun with him for protection. Jim was so angry that he wanted to rush in and kill Victor. However, because Victor had a gun, Jim didn't dare do anything. After the trip, Victor returned to his house. He brought out pictures he had drawn before, including a picture of a pack of hunting dogs. Memories suddenly flooded back. Many years ago, Victor was the first person to set foot in this village. At that time, he was still a boy. Victor arrived and saw corpses all around. They were being eaten by a pack of hunting dogs. Victor suddenly discovered a boy in white. He was happily playing on the swing, but then disappeared without a trace. That memory still haunts Victor. He always wanted to find out truth about who that mysterious boy was. The next day, Jim's family went to the public house for breakfast. While everyone was chatting happily, Sarah suddenly felt a sharp pain in her hand. A line of words suddenly appeared on it. Sarah looked at Ethan in panic. Then she had an epileptic seizure and fell to the ground unconscious. When she woke up, she found herself in the infirmary. Trudy was worried about Sarah, but she said she just had a slight headache. Then Nathan, Sarah's younger brother, found out and came here. Nathan had known about what Sarah had done for a long time. He did not report to the sheriff, but quietly stayed by her side to protect his sister. However, recently, Sarah had been doing strange things that made Nathan extremely worried. Not long after leaving the hospital, Sarah took a knife and went to Jim's house. Sarah pretended to visit Ethan. She also invited the boy to visit her farm. Ethan was excited and agreed. Toby saw that and decided to follow her son. They did not know that the young girl was preparing a very gruesome murder plot. After they arrived at the farm, Sarah pretended to invite Toby into the warehouse and took advantage of the moment when Toby was not paying attention to lock the door and lock Toby inside. Then Sarah took a knife and went to Ethan, intending to kill the boy. However, Nathan came home in time and saw this scene. Nathan immediately ran to stop she. While the two were struggling, Sarah accidentally slashed Nathan's neck. He only had time to say a few words and then quickly died. At this time, the villagers heard the scream and ran over. Sarah hurriedly ran into the forest. The incident was quickly exposed. Jim angrily scolded Stephen for always causing trouble for his family. Stephen said that he had sent someone to look for Sarah, but there was no trace. By nightfall, she would definitely be eaten by monsters. One day, then 2 days, no one saw Sarah anywhere. They thought she had died in the woods. However, no one expected that the girl was locked in the pastor's basement. It turned out that a few days before, Nathan had secretly gone to the pastor and told everything his sister had done, including the girl hearing a strange voice in her head. The pastor felt that this was not a simple matter, so he secretly locked her in the basement to ask more questions. Sarah said that when she first arrived in this town, she heard a strange voice in her head. It said that if she did what it said, the people in the village would soon return home. Sarah thought it was true, so she did it, even doing the evil things she didn't dare to think of. After hearing this, the pastor looked suspicious. He had long believed that this village was not real, but a fantasy world created from the 74th book of the Bible. The voice Sarah heard might be that of God, the creator of life. If this was true, then Sarah possessed a very special ability that would be very necessary in the future. Suddenly, she had a severe pain. She took out a pen and drew a circle on a piece of paper. She said that this was proof that the voice in her head was real. The pastor looked at paper and saw a strange drawing. Then he went to the vacant lot and dug up a cloth bag. It was the thing he had buried when he first came to this village. There was a chocolate bar in the bag. Surprisingly, the drawing on the paper was exactly the same as the logo on the chocolate bar. The pastor was shocked when he saw it. Meanwhile, Jim and his wife were investigating the items in the house. They found it strange that there was nothing inside the wire cord. The power plug was broken on one side, but the light was still on. So where did this electricity come from? While they were thinking, Jade ran over. Jade wanted to create a radio receiver with Jim. If they could catch the signal from outside, they would prove that they were somewhere on Earth. Since the village had no usable items, the two went to the black car to get the necessary materials to assemble it. After a session, they finally succeeded in creating a radio receiver. Jim quickly climbed up the biggest tree where he was supposed to place the receiver. While standing below, Jade suddenly discovered that the tree was bleeding. Jade looked up and was horrified to see it full of dead bodies. The same strange phenomenon appeared on the tree trunk as the day before. At that moment, a soldier appeared from behind. He held a gun and threatened Jade, causing Jade to run into the woods. He didn't know know how far he had run, but when he looked back, he saw Jim in front of him, and the surrounding scenery returned to normal. Jade was scared and ran away. After placing the receiver on the tree, Jim turned it on to use. However, after a while of broadcasting his voice outside, he still didn't hear anyone respond. He returned home in frustration. He went down to the basement and found Tabby digging a hole. She said that all the house's electrical wires were underground. There must be something hidden underneath. Meanwhile, Jade was sitting at the restaurant and continuously redrawing the strange symbol he had seen on the tree trunk. At that time, Mrs. Liu appeared. She looked at the symbol and realized she had seen it somewhere. She led Jade into the storage room. There, they discovered that the strange symbol was very similar to the image in an ancient book. The mystery was gradually revealed. That night, in the communal house, while everyone was sleeping, a man secretly went up the stairs and opened the window to look outside. There was a monster in the form of a beautiful woman. She asked when she could come in. The man smiled after hearing that. His name was Kevin. He was a quiet person and usually did not like to interact with people around him. He was always sullen and alone. No one knew that this guy was a pervert. Every night, he secretly went to the window and talked to a monster. It was in the form of a beautiful young woman who often tried to seduce the man and asked him to open the door for her. That day was a special day. Once a year, the people in the communal house would gather to hold a party to celebrate those who were still alive and also to remember those who had died. They did not know that a terrible event would happen tonight. Meanwhile, the priest went to Stevens to tell him everything about Sarah and the mysterious voice in her head. At first, Stevens was skeptical. The priest brought the drawing and the chocolate bar and said that this was what he had buried when he first arrived at the village. Sarah was the one who came after him. Logically, the girl could not know about these things unless the voice in her head was real. After listening, Stevens said that he also had a plan. That is, he would go into the forest himself for a few days to find a way out. They could not stay in this village forever. At first, the villagers were afraid of the monsters and did not dare to go into the forest. However, if they carried a protective stone, they might be safe from the monsters. Although he had never tried this method before, Stevens decided to take a risk. The priest saw this and immediately said that he and Sarah would go with him. She had mysterious abilities that might be useful. Meanwhile, at the communal house, a man named Kevin, after many days of being fascinated by the monster, finally opened the door to let it in. While the two were kissing, the monster suddenly bit the man. Before he could scream, it rushed over and killed him. The others were happily eating and drinking at the party. They did not know that the whole house was surrounded by monsters. A moment later, an Asian girl was about to go to her room to sleep. As soon as she entered, she was immediately surrounded by monsters. They grabbed the girl and killed her. The people around knew what happened and immediately sent out a warning. Everyone was scared and ran away. The monsters enjoyed hunting the poor people. The scene was extremely chaotic. Julie was with Victor at the moment. She wanted to ask him some questions about the village. Just then, the alarm bell rang. Victor seemed to know what was going to happen, so he had prepared everything. He threw a rope through the window and then escaped with Julie. While everyone was running away, Victor alone led Julie into the forest. They went to a big tree. Victor told Julie to jump into the tree trunk. It would lead her to another safe place. Before Julie could do anything, Victor pushed her inside. She screamed in panic. A moment later, she looked back and saw herself standing in a wooden cabinet inside an abandoned cellar outside the village. Victor had disappeared without a trace. Meanwhile, the people who were attacked at the communal house were running to find a place to hide. They went to Stephen's house to stay overnight. While the priest was helping the people around, suddenly a monster rushed in and slashed his neck. Stevens immediately ran to save him and quickly brought the priest into the house, but it was too late. He bled to death. No one could help. After that night, the whole village was in a state of grief. 14 people were killed and eaten by monsters. Their bodies were scattered all over the village. This made Stephen want to carry out his plan immediately. Before leaving, Stevens left all the control to Kenny. Although he was very sad, he could not do anything more. Then Stevens went to the infirmary to visit Ellis. After yesterday's incident, Ellis was fortunately only slightly injured. Ellis had not been close to his father for a long time. He still could not forgive his father for the incident in the past. The past suddenly came back. Many years ago, when Stephen was taking his wife and son Ellis on a trip, they were also blocked by a large tree. After looking for another way, the three of them accidentally got lost in the village. At that time, the people here had not found the protective stone, so their lives were extremely difficult. Food and water were very scarce. At night, when monsters appeared, people could only find hidden places to hide, hoping not to be discovered. Every day in the village, there were corpses of people who were unfortunately discovered and eaten by monsters. Stephen decided to reform this place. He stood up to lead and manage the people here. One day, Stephen went into the forest and discovered a live goat. The villagers were completely surprised. He said that he also found chickens and other livestock. If they could raise them, the food supply supply would be guaranteed. So, despite the danger, Stephen went into the forest alone to hunt animals. One day, he accidentally encountered a hunting dog. It suddenly ran away, causing Stephen to chase after it. Unfortunately, he got lost. It gradually got dark and he could not find his way back to the village, so he was extremely scared. At that moment, he accidentally slipped and fell into a cave. Before Stephen could realize it, monsters appeared outside. They slowly walked closer. Stephen thought he was about to die, but the monsters only looked at him for a moment and then left. Only then did Stephen realize that this cave contained strangely shaped black stones. The next morning, he hurried back to the village. As soon as he arrived, he heard gunshots. It was Stephen's wife. She was holding a gun and attacking the people around her. She said that this place was just a dream. If they died, they could return to reality. Stephen hurriedly took the gun and ran over to ask her to put the gun down. The wife couldn't believe it when she saw her husband alive. She thought she was dreaming. Then she immediately took the gun and was about to attack someone else. Stephen had no choice but to shoot his wife dead. After that incident, the villagers found a way to protect themselves from the monsters, but Stephen lost the person he loved the most. Back to reality, Ellis finally forgave his father. He knew that his father had no choice but to kill his mother. Stephen was also the one who found the protective stone and helped the villagers a lot. The father and son then hugged each other and said goodbye. Before leaving for the forest, Stephen secretly went to the priest's basement and took Sarah with him. Stevens believed that the priest had said something about Sarah. Maybe this girl would be the key to solving everything. After the failure of the radio receiver, Jim decided to do another project. This time he designed a radio antenna and planned to place it on the roof of the communal house. If this project was successful, they would be able to contact the outside world. Jim then presented his plan to the villagers. Most of them agreed with the idea and decided to help. In the following days, everyone started to design the antenna. Although they said there was hope, many people in the village knew that this was just a pipe dream and that the project would fail again and everything would collapse again. Some people even lost hope and ended their lives quietly. After finding the mysterious symbol sketchbook, Jade spent many days in his room studying it. He suddenly realized that there were 2 pages stuck together in the notebook. After separating it, Jade found an old photo of a strange man. Mrs. Liu was shocked when she looked at it. In the corner of the photo was Victor when he was a child. So Victor was not the first person to come to this village, as he said. Jade then rushed to find Victor everywhere, but he had been missing since that day. Meanwhile, Stephen and Sarah had gone deep into the forest. They found a large tree with bottles with pieces of paper hanging from it. Sarah had a severe headache when she saw it. She fell down and fainted. When she woke up, it was already dark. They were both sitting in a tent. Stephen said that he had looked at pieces of paper in the bottle. They all had the same number, 1864, written on them. What had happened here more than 100 years ago? Sarah then said that while she was unconscious, she had heard a woman's voice. The woman advised Stephen to stop and not go deeper into the forest. There were things more terrifying than monsters there. The two of them didn't know what to do when suddenly the ground began to shake violently. The tent seemed to collapse. As soon as the earthquake ended, a blinding light appeared, piercing the tent. The two of them went outside and saw that it was already morning. There were white patches of silt all around. Stephen suddenly heard a strange sound. He tried to go to where the sound came from and saw his wife hanging on a tree. She suddenly woke up and rushed to grab Stephen's hand, causing him to panic and run away. At this time, spiders from all over the silk began to crawl out and bite Stephen. Sarah quickly ran to help. After a while, the two of them finished them all. Because Stephen was bitten by a spider, his body began to spread poison, causing him great pain. However, they did not give up and decided to continue. Meanwhile, Jim finally succeeded in making a signal antenna. They placed it on the roof of the house, to the cheers of everyone. Thanks to the power source connected to the devices in the village, the antenna was able to operate smoothly. Before everyone could rejoice, a storm suddenly came from afar. Jim tried to connect to the signal outside. He was extremely happy when he heard a man's voice. They thought that everyone was about to be saved, but the man suddenly told Jim that your wife should not have dug that hole. Jim was extremely frightened when he heard that. He immediately ran home. For many days, Toby had been diligently digging a hole in the basement of the house. Suddenly, it began to move. The ground cracked, causing Toby to fall straight down. Toby did not understand what was happening when suddenly Victor came from afar. He said that he had known that Toby would fall down here, so he was waiting. Then Victor revealed that this cave was where the monsters were hiding. They also drew all over the walls. It turned out that the monsters had been deep underground for a long time, right under the people's feet without them knowing. Then Victor quickly took Toby before it collapsed. A while later, Jim returned home and found a hole in the floor. He tried to call his wife's name, but there was no response. After many attempts, Stephen and Sarah finally discovered a mysterious lighthouse hidden on a high hill. However, Stephen's injuries were too severe for him to continue. continue. While not knowing what to do, Sarah suddenly saw a boy in white. He pointed to a big tree and said that if she went in there, she would be safe. Sarah heard it and immediately took Stephen to the tree and pushed him into the black hole, thinking that Stephen had safely returned to the village, but the place he arrived at was 4 closed walls, with no way out. Stephen tried to call for help, but no one heard. At this time, in front of the village, a mysterious bus came from somewhere. Are these new residents, or is there another force about to appear? Who is the boy in white? What will be the fate of Sarah, Stephen, Toby, and Victor? Most importantly, the mystery of the village has not been discovered. Perhaps all questions will be answered in part 2. Please subscribe to the channel to watch part 2 as soon as possible. Goodbye, and see you again.